Hello and welcome to another episode of the O3C podcast, coming to you from O3C Games. My name is Jonathan Dunn and I am joined by Chris Dow.
Keep your keys in your pocket.
And we are returning to our Around the World in 80 Games Odyssey. We're back, Chris.
Hey! It's been about 500 years, it feels like.
It does, doesn't it, actually? It does. It's, yeah. I mean, because we did our Switch 2 special. You still playing a Switch 2? We'll find out in a bit.
Oh, yeah. That's the point of the episode, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're... exactly. Well, we're back on our trip, and we are stop number 20. So we're at the halfway point. After this episode, we'll be at the halfway point of our Odyssey, because we're doing Around the World in 80 games, and it's 2 games an episode. So it's 40 episodes.
That's it. That's the maths. We got to the midway point.
I know. Who'd have thought? I mean, we did, because we said we'll do it.
And we planned it.
And we planned it.
And we've never reneged on a plan yet.
Ever.
No.
Unless it's a wedding invitation.
In which case, neither here nor there.
Exactly. But before we talk about the games of Ukraine's, we are going to... It's good to be back, isn't it? We are going to talk about what we've been playing in the last month or two or three. Why not?
Are you still playing Night Rain like a madman?
Thank you for asking the question. My time with Night Rain has started to slow down a little bit.
It started
to slow down. I am over 300 hours logged on it now.
Woof.
This Rallantando comes off the back of them. That happened. This Rallantando comes off the back of... That is right, isn't it? That's when music slowed down.
Slowing down, yeah.
I plucked that out of my arse. Which coincidentally is not slowing down.
Isn't it? Because ritornello is getting faster, isn't it? No, it's a repeating phrase, often returned to, is a ritornello. So I can't remember which ones, but I'm sure Rallantando is slowing down. Rallantando.
Ra, 2 letters.
There you go. Gradual decrease of speed.
There we go.
Well done.
It comes off the back of FromSoft introducing a new, super army soldier. This is a new super hardcore mode called Deep of Night, which basically just makes the game harder. Enemies have more health. They hit harder. You can find red versions of enemies that are just horrible. They drop red versions of weapons, which include bigger perks, but also demerits as well that cause you all kinds of problems. So it'd be like, increase your strength by 6, but you'll constantly die. If you keep winning runs, then you descend to deeper levels of this mode. So you start at depths level 1, and then I think you need to win 5 runs, and then you'll descend to depths level 2, 3, 4. And if you can beat that, then you sort of settle on depths 5, and then you just try and just keep staying at depth 5, because if you lose, then you lose points and you go back down and blah blah blah. And each level then introduces more challenge, like not letting you know what the boss is going to be, or just hiding things on the map, all the while making the enemies tankier and spankier. Me and Louise cleared our way through depth 1 fairly okay, but depth 2 it's not just proving too hard. It's just not that fun.
Yeah.
You don't have to learn any new ways of playing like you do with, say, the Everdark variants of the bosses, which will have a whole new ultra dangerous phase to navigate. Deep of Night just becomes attritional, and that's not that fun when you don't really have any sort of tangible reward for doing well in the mode.
Yeah.
You get to, when you play in the Deep of Night mode, you can equip 3 extra relics, which is sort of how you customize your character, and you get whole new types of relics, and they're really, really cool, and there's some fun new mechanics and twists to incorporate. But yeah, I don't know, we've just been getting frustrated and a bit bored rather than feel like we're slowly mastering it and making progress. The one thing I will say is that when we've managed to do a run as a trio with someone else, the game mode feels a lot better and more well adjusted, but it's harder to find a third person available when you are to play with, especially when you kind of do need sort of a bit of reliable coordination, and that means playing with a random could be dreadful, or they might have a specific idea of how they want to play, and we don't want to do that, or we think it's going to be different. But like, we still really want to enjoy this mode, and we're talking about ways in which we could more reliably find a third person to join us more regularly. But at the moment, when we are hopping in, we're not really playing Deep of Night. We just stick to enjoying, the power fantasy of taking on the Everdark Sovereigns, and that's fun. It's still fun. But now we're really hankering for the DLC, which is slated for Q4, which we are now into. I'm not obviously expecting it,
tomorrow,
but hopefully we'll get an update on that soon, and that will give us, something else to look forward to. While I'm at it, let's give you some updates on some of the other games I've been playing.
Yeah, let's headline this bad boy.
Sort of headlining. Over on the Switch 2, my enthusiasm with Fantasy Life I started to slow after rolling credits on the main story. There's still an enormous amount for me to do, but I think taking a pause at this point felt fine because, the game is so, in a good way, it's quite simplistic. I don't have any real fear about jumping back into it again, like in a few weeks or months.
Yeah.
And then not remembering where I am or how to play it. So it's a nice one to have sat on my console for when I fancy diving in again. And that also sort of coincided with the Switch 2 upgrade and DLC for Kirby and the Forgotten Land arriving.
Oh, yeah.
So it was good timing to jump into that. It's brilliant and it's wonderful. The graphical and performance upgrades to the game make a wonderful game even more wonderfuler. And it's a game that is just so fun and creative, constantly just delighting and surprising you, and that extends to the new content in the DLC, which isn't as sizable as I was hoping for. I was expecting at the very least to get like a new world to explore with a bunch of new levels, but then also like challenge stages and stuff. But instead, we get a dozen remixed versions of existing levels. And to be fair, they are augmented out of recognition and integrate some brilliant new features, but it can't help but feel a bit disappointing, even though, it's all excellent. There is a new Colosseum Gauntlet to challenge, which is very hard, but I had a great time playing through everything. I think if you break it down, the cost of the upgrade, which has raised a few eyebrows, like it's, I don't know, £16 or $16.99 or something like that in pounds is $20, say.
Yeah.
If you look at, let's say, the cost of the Switch 2 upgrade of the base game, you could say that's $10. And that's worth it to make a very pretty game much nicer. Another $10 for the very good but slightly underwhelming extra content is also probably fair. And hopefully they're busy putting their energy and attention into creating a full sequel, because I would love that. And I really hope they do more of that. On this sort of topic, I have actually also tried out the new DLC for Donkey Kong Bonanza, which was sort of shadow dropped after the Nintendo Direct. And it gives you a full classic DK Island to explore and smash up, which contains a lot of extra places to get more gold and lots of Easter eggs and fun things to do. The big new feature in the DLC is Emerald Rush mode, which is basically a roguelike smash 'em up mode. And you start by testing out this mode on DK Island, and you're tasked with obtaining as much emerald bonandium, I think, green bananas, basically, unrefined, unripened. That's I think that's the idea. An unripened bonandium is an emerald banana. Anyway, the more you smash, and then you get gold or bonandium shit, and then you find emerald fossils and emerald bananas. Every time you get a fossil or a banana, you then unlock something to make smashing bigger and faster or more powerful, more profitable, add new abilities, enhance your bonanza transformations, and then you get bigger and bigger and stronger as you get through wave and wave of things until it just sort of ends. And to be fair, it's really good fun. Like, it takes the central mechanic of what makes DK Bonanza so fun, which is smashing stuff up.
Makes it bigger.
Runs it through a few multipliers, and it's great post-game content, because for people who have got everything in the game but still want the satisfaction of playing the game, you can now do that, like, on repeat as much as you want. And there's loads of things to unlock as you sort of, make progress. You can unlock Emerald Rush mode for lots of the different layers that are in the game as well. So there is quite a bit there. Back to the price point issue then, because the DK DLC is priced at $16.99, $20 basically, and it is not worth that.
Yeah.
Like, this has all the feeling of a free post-game update, like a nice Easter egg of a bonus area to explore in DK Island, and a bonus game mode that utilizes all the areas that are already in the game. Like, it would be nice if it was just a little thank you to players for buying the game and making it a big hit. And this pricing comes off the back of some grubby Nintendo behavior, which isn't helping me feel good about things. Like, the biggest bone of contention in the last few weeks is that Nintendo have now successfully patented the monster catching, or rather monster summoning mechanics that is central to Pokemon that they didn't come up with. And it means that so many other games that use a mechanic of summoning a something to fight on your behalf, I guess, are now illegal. I mean, Dark Souls
it's good,
is one,
isn't it?
any monster catching thing. It's such a broad bracket. Like, obviously, you can blame Nintendo for this, but also, who grants a patent for something as broad as that?
Yeah.
It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. But also, something that's actually made me cancel a pre-order is the way that Pokemon Legends Z2A is going to be priced and sort of distributed. So the game is being released on Switch 1 and Switch 2. And I think you're looking at paying £50 or £60 for the game. Fine. No problems there. It's nice that it's not going for the £70 premium game price, given that this game is still a cross-gen game with Switch 1, which basically means it's catering for about 3 generations of hardware, given how dated Switch 1 is now. But they've announced DLC for the game before the game has launched, which I always think is a bit grubby anyway, because this content is being developed to be in the game. And they've made the decision to paywall it, not because it's going to be worthy additional content to serve as like an epilogue or a continuation of the story for players a few months down the line. To make matters worse, this DLC is available to buy on day one.
So it's just there, ready to go.
Exactly what they're doing is going, if you want to finish the game, you have to pay more. Pay to play to the end of the game. The content is literally in the game. Yeah. It's not downloadable content. It's there. It's in the game. It's just behind a paywall. And if that wasn't bad enough, they've also announced that a whole bunch of content is going to be locked behind participating in the seasonal content for the game, which, like, on its own, isn't the end of the world. It's annoying because this content includes the mega evolutions of your starting Pokemon in the game, which are brand new. They've been making a big deal about it. That's a nice end goal to work towards in the game. And now you have to engage with the seasonal content, whether you like it or not, to get a feeling of completion. But also, of course, you can only play the seasonal content if you're subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online. They haven't said at what point in the season you'll unlock that specific content. Could be a year, 2 years, 3 years, who knows? And so a game that is being hamstrung by 10-year-old mobile gaming hardware is costing you £60 plus 20 quid, 30 quid for the end of the game, and £40 a year to at some point complete the game. And that is fucking trench.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get the game unless that is changed, because that is not on.
It's becoming more and more of an issue, I think, with any games that are built as kind of like the infinite live service thing. You could look at the model of, like, Fortnite is probably the biggest example running at the moment, where you buy into Fortnite and the whole idea is that you will always feel like you could be missing out. So you're just constantly buying season passes to play on, kind of thing. But the difference there, I suppose, is that the base game, if you just want to dip in and out, is still free to play. And Pokemon is very much not. But I think it's the whole industry is in this weird place of kind of flux and movement at the moment, because no one knows how to recoup the costs of big development anymore. And development has got more and more expensive. And whereas the most obvious answer to me would be just start making slightly smaller games. We had that conversation around Astrobot, where it was like Astrobot did incredibly well. Everyone loved it, both players and critics. And it took way less time to develop, and it was way less costly, and everyone bought it, and it was a big win for Sony. And I think more big publishers need to kind of look at that and say, okay, we can have a big marquee thing that we're working on, and it's going to be on like a 7-8 year cycle. We're making some huge project, but in between that, we're also going to have smaller things that cost a little bit less and are intended to be, it's a 20-30 hour thing. You play it, you have a nice time, and then you could just put it on the shelf or get rid of it, kind of thing. As
Yeah.
opposed to, you know, like we said again loads of times before, not every game has to sustain you till death.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think there's only so much time I have in my life, let alone my days,
Yeah.
you know, and no one can get to all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think
Exactly. Yeah.
it's particularly grubby when it's kind of leveraging a fan base like Pokemon that is
Yeah.
humongous, and they know that people will pay this, even if they said, "Oh, the game's actually £120 now on day
Yeah.
one, and the DLC that you need is actually £45." But that's that you pay that twice yearly, and then you will also need this
Yeah.
other thing, and people will pay it because it's the
Yeah.
same as when, you know, you had to have 18 different apps on 18 different consoles to transfer your Pokemon up and down, and some might have needed a subscription, and you might have
Yeah.
needed Nintendo Online, all that sort of stuff. And yet people went, well, I'll just get the
Yeah, right.
spreadsheet out and work it out, and I'll budget for it and everything else because it's
Yeah.
important to people.
Yeah.
So they
exactly.
know who they're targeting.
I mean, it's so annoying because, like, another game that was shown in the recent Nintendo Direct is like a Pokemon, Animal Crossing, Minecrafty type game
yes.
called Pokopia, and it looks wonderful. It looks absolutely wonderful, and it could be brilliant. You remember when, before Animal Crossing New Horizon came out, we were really concerned that they were going to implement the
Yes,
sort
the
of
Pocket
free-to-play Pocket Camp style for whatever came next. Obviously, brilliantly, they didn't, because that totally ruins the whole idea.
Yes.
If they do that for Pokopia, then it's turning a surefire brilliant game into an absolute stinker for me. And
Yeah.
I really hope that's not the case, because it actually looks like a game that's got some quality for the first time in a Pokemon game in a long time. It actually looks nice. You know?
It looks like a current generation product.
Because, like, even Pokemon Legends, I'm not convinced by it I wasn't massively convinced by it anyway, but given how much I love Pokemon Legends Arceus, but then the reasons why I enjoyed that, they're not in this game. You know, I like the fact that it was this open world, ancient, natural kind of, you know, thing. Whereas Pokemon Legends Z2A is all in a city, and I don't know. Might be amazing, and I might eat my words, and I might say, actually, it's worth £400 to complete this game.
But also, you
probably
might not.
Yeah. I played 300 hours of Night Rain, and that cost £30.
Well, there you go. That's value.
I've now since bought a special edition that costs £100.
But you didn't need that. That was just a bonus.
Nope. Still good value, though.
Yeah.
Still good value. If I've paid £130 for 300 hours of gaming.
That's cheap. Cheap.
All right, my little bird. What have you played?
Oh, this was actually quite hard to think about because it does feel like it's been a long time since we recorded a regular episode. Like, it has been literal months, but at the same time, I think it feels even longer because of how much prep our Switch 2 episode took.
Oh my God.
Because
yeah.
it was a whopper, and it meant that when I sat down to kind of think about what I was going to write for this show, to actually think what I've played, what I've enjoyed, I'm going back to the beginning of my summer holiday, essentially. And it's quite difficult because I am now an old man whose short-term memory, at least, is not as good as it used to be. You know? Nope. It's not that I've suddenly forgot how to function and things like that. But if you said, what game were you playing last week? It was like, I don't know, but I was playing Tetris today. So Tetris? Like, I just fill the gaps like that. But I thought about it. I went back through like my Steam history. I went back through my Switch history, stuff like that, to try and think what I've been doing. So some headlines from the summer holiday first. I put another 20 hours into Blueprints. I began to make a bit of headway in the post game, I suppose you'd call it. But really, the post credit sequence of the game is the game. And as much as I like that there is a punctuation point at the end of the first kind of major phase of play when you do roll credits, I still could not estimate how much there is left to do and left to kind of unfurl. There is so much there. You know, I've added another 40 pages to my notebook. I'm involved. But that's kind of also having a bit of a break at the moment. But I had a good week or two where I was essentially just playing Blueprints again and nothing else. In the break too, George and I beat Temtem Swarm again. So we knocked down the remainder of the newly added achievements because as it's early access, every month it's like, oh, there's another 10 things to do and there's a new character to beat and stuff like that. So we kind of leave it for periods, and then we have a good like focused session over a few nights to try and do it. And that was quite fun. So we're back to 100% again. There is another big update, I think literally coming this week. We're up to 0.8 on their roadmap. It's still not Vampire Survivors, but I still think it's a very good Survivors clone. You know, we've had a lot of fun with it. To reflect back something you mentioned, I did pick up Kirby at the start of the new term. I played a couple of levels and said, oh, isn't that nice? And then I put it on pause because I'm back at school. My brain is just filled with the mush of school. And it's very hard, even with a game like that that's not massively long. It can be bite-sized because it's stage-based and everything else. Just I didn't have the energy to do it properly yet. So I'm really excited to, hopefully, you know, half term's a few weeks away, and maybe we get a chance then. But the biggest game I played across the summer holiday was one I actually alluded to at the end of our Switch 2 episode, and it is the genuinely sublime Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
Yeah.
Now, I've said probably 100 times on this very show that I'm not really an RPG guy, but it wasn't until playing Clair Obscur that I was able to really start to understand why. And I think for me, an RPG needs to engage on like a narrative level. It's got to do something on a gameplay level, like usually the battles or something that pulls me in as well. And it's got to do something on an aesthetic level as well. And there's so many RPGs that I feel either interested in or sometimes quite enjoy the bits I've played that might hit one or two of these pillars, but just fall down somewhere else. So I might love the story, the art and the music of, say, Ni no Kuni, but I've never been completely taken with the battle system. It's like, I like the world. I like everything else, but you know, the actual fighting, I'm kind of like, get through this so I can watch another little cutscene. That'd be lovely.
Yeah.
I love the music and battle system of Chrono Trigger that Minty made me play a long, long time ago. But I've always found the story a bit of a shrug, at least in the first 3 hours when I've tried to play it. Like I've started Chrono Trigger 5 or 6 times, as sacrilegious as that probably seems to some people. But every time I get to about the same point and I go, I just can't be bothered. Can't be bothered. Another one, I love the visuals, the music, and the combat. You know, should be a full house almost of I Am Setsuna, but the pacing is so slow. It's really hard to get going with as well. It's another one that I've restarted 3 or 4 times. I go, all the music's piano. It's really like softly nice in the background. It's always snowing. Everything's got like a really sort of painterly aesthetic. But then I'm like, when does something happen? We've set this up in the intro and now I'm just wandering about a town and nothing is pushing this forwards.
Yeah.
So again, something stops me playing it. Games that I have really enjoyed. The first Dragon Quest, as simple as that is, hits all the columns. Panzer Dragoon Saga obviously hits all the columns for me. Final Fantasy VII, even though I've not finished it, hit all the columns when I was playing through that, especially with the Seventh Heaven PC tweaks I was using when I played it on the Steam Deck. But Clair Obscur, I think, might just be the modern RPG that starts to make me properly consider the genre as something I might like to engage with more, because it's a proper example of something where the art and music is world class. The story had me fully bought in like 15 minutes into starting the game, and every battle is worthy of your full focus and attention, and every encounter carries proper weight, whether you're fighting like sort of jobber enemies on the world map or a big named boss. It's just fun to fight, and that's quite an achievement, I think, as like a very simple setup if people haven't heard of this one or not really kind of read into it. The game is set in a fictional place called Lumiere. It's a very beautiful, very French city inspired by the Belle Epoque art movement. And once a year in this city, there's a mystical entity called the Paintress who appears out at sea on a kind of a distant monolith and writes a number on this monolith that foretells that everyone of an age equal to that number will die the next day in a phenomenon known as the gommage, which is French for erase, I've learned. So you begin the game as a character called Gustave. He's a young man who will be taking part in Expedition 33, annual mission that sees volunteer soldiers attempting to take down the Paintress and, you know, to try and prevent the gommage of the following year. And even that is quite stirring, isn't it? Population is about to be wiped out. It's kind of your last ditch. We do it once yearly. We hope we make more progress. But chuck in the fact that the game opens with you desperate to meet and reconcile with an ex-partner who is soon to be vaporized before you set sail for the Paintress Isle. I was all in, like full steam ahead from the get-go. I chose to play the game with French voiceovers. I would heartily encourage everyone who picks this up to do the same, because the English voice work is excellent.
Charlie Cox.
I know, but this really is a case when the aesthetics of the aesthetics of the language feel really vital to the vibe and feel of the world.
Mm.
And there are so many like francophone kind of jokes and references in enemy names or attack titles that it just felt right to kind of say, okay, well, let's just do it in French then. I know the tiniest bit of GCSE level French. Definitely would not classify as GCSE level anymore. We're talking more like introductory year 7 lessons is what I actually recall. But all the aesthetic choices in Clair Obscur are so considered. It felt like I would be doing a disservice not to give the French cast a shout. And it's great. You know, I don't think there's a weak link in the game, but it's the battle system that I think is the absolute jewel, for me at least. The headline feature is that every single attack from every single enemy can be parried, blocked, or avoided. Just every single one. And it involves a level of trial and error when you first come across a new kind of enemy type or you're fighting a boss for the first time. But the level of kind of timing and rhythm that you eventually pick up and understand, it's not going to appeal to everyone. But the first time I beat an enemy damageless, like sidestepping to parry every single attack because I was like properly locked in and I'd learnt the patterns, it just felt so good. Like I've been dreadful at games like the Souls games, things like that, anytime I've played them, even though I know in theory it's the same, look for the visual tells, do the things at the right time. Like I get that it's the same thing. But there's something about the pacing of it still being a turn-based battle that you've got like just a slight pause in between each phase.
Yeah.
That I
You
found
don't need
much
to worry
easier.
about moving yourself at the same
Yes,
time
yeah.
is the thing.
So it's been much easier to say, right, even though as soon as it's the enemy's turn, I have to be ready. It's a case of I say when it's the enemy's turn. You know, and I think that works really well for me. Whereas in something like Elden Ring, when I was playing that, I would think I was psyched up. I would go in and then I'd make the same mistake 15 times in a row, even though I knew it was like when he raises his arm, that's when we roll. And I just didn't ever do it. Whereas in this, you know, I'm probably 20-ish hours into the game and I'm still enjoying every single encounter.
Wow.
Like I had a proper, I think I really love this thing when I found an optional side boss in a hidden away area of the world map that took, not hyperbolizing, 15 solid minutes of perfect parrying to beat. But then when I did, it rewarded me with about 10 levels of experience and a few like game changing abilities that then changed the way I'd approach combat from then on.
Yeah.
Like it was such a big shift that it was just worthwhile doing and learning. And the 4 or 5 times it took to practice before I finally got it, I was like, that wasn't wasted time. You know, it was worth it. It felt worth it. Management of your party and personal progression is also really good in this. The way magic and abilities work is really great. It's like, it's almost too much to try and explain, especially for someone like me who is not an RPG person. But if you have a skill assigned to a character, once they've used it to a certain extent, it becomes a passive skill that can be applied to other characters as well. And then a lot of what you're doing is kind of ending, like building a plan and approach to every fight with your skills as well as your kind of combat abilities and your parrying, dodging, you know, stuff like that. So you might go in thinking, right, we're gonna level up speed on this character, so they always go first because that means they can cast a specific sort of debuff on a specific enemy. That's then going to set up my next party member to use a different ability. That ability is going to stack damage every time I dodge or parry. That's then going to buy the final character a free shot on another enemy's weak point, and it's kind of just making a plan for even the smallest enemies and it feeling really, really good when it pays off. There's like a level of almost strategy RPG planning to it, but on a much smaller scale. And my brain isn't supposed to care about this stuff. And yet I'm so taken by the whole experience, I found it impossible not to care. So I've got really involved in kind of like, how am I teching and specking my party? How can I make sure this works?
Min-maxing.
Well, there we go. You can play this game on a range of difficulty settings, but I would highly recommend for anyone who is interested in picking it up, just stick to at least the default setting. Like if you think you're great at this sort of game, whack it right up. But there's kind of a story mode where you don't then have to really worry about kind of parrying and avoiding attacks that often. But I think that would take away a big part of what's so successful in this game, to kind of like just have that sort of smoothed over too much. So I would really suggest people force themselves to kind of try and engage with the combat properly, at least to a point. And then if after an hour or two you think, no, this just isn't for me, you've still got the story mode as well. But I think it is worth doing because the narrative is really good. Performances are great. World's stunning. Music's top tier. But it is the combat that's like the gel that holds it all together and keeps you moving from A to B. I've not finished the game. It's another casualty of going back to work.
Yeah.
Which I will also detail a bit more later in kind of another section. But my goodness, would I like to? I Googled this so I could try and be really cool. I was going to say 2 massive pouces vers le haut, which is 2 thumbs up in French.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah,
Which
it's
is
a stunner.
actually a racist slur
Oh, it might be.
in some cultures.
It might be. It might
yeah,
be.
yeah.
What else have you played? What else have you played?
I've played a bit of Clair Obscur actually.
Have you?
Yeah,
what did you think?
yeah. I mean, exactly what you said. It is stunning, utterly stunning. I was playing it in English because I'm not a dick. I'm kidding. I am playing it in English, but just because I'm lazy and easily distracted, and I find it very difficult to read subtitles and retain the information at the same time.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, the battle system sort of caught me off guard because I didn't realize it was going to be as active as it was. When I was playing it, I wasn't really in the right frame of mind to sort of get my head around it. So I was like, okay, I will be in the mood for that at some point because that's incredible. I just need to find that, and it might be soon.
Might be
soon. Do you want about just a little game I've played?
I don't know if that's going to be you sort of like setting this up to be an absolute epic.
No,
yes.
no, it's a tiny little game. It's probably the shortest game I've played this year, and it's a cult indie game that just got a Switch 2 update. Is The Exit 8.
I have heard the name.
Yeah,
but please do tell me about the game.
It's only a couple of quid. It's a further quid to upgrade to the Switch 2 version. Not that you can really tell, because it is a very ugly game with quite blurry visuals anyway, which is sort of by design, to be fair to it. And I've wanted to play this. It's been hyped as a sort of spiritual successor to Hideo Kojima's traumatizing playable trailer, PT, which was released as a teaser for what would not be his Silent Hill game. And also The Exit 8 has been mentioned in the same breath as the original Slender, The 8 Pages. And I'll start by saying that it is not, even by a million miles, anywhere near as scary as either of those games.
Well, that's good.
I wouldn't say it's scary at all. It is.
That's better.
It's atmospheric and tense and maybe a bit unsettling, but there is nothing really scary in the game. Although you might beg to differ because I'm
a big weenie.
Well, if you haven't seen this game, it's very simple in its premise. It's a first-person puzzle game, and you are in a very bland Japanese subway station on floor 0, and you are tasked with reaching Exit 8. At first glance, the floors of this subway station are identical, with a row of posters on one wall, some utility room doors on the other, strip tube lighting running overhead, and a bored commuter with a briefcase wandering the other way to you. However, you are tasked with spotting anomalies to this setup, which determines whether you press on or turn back. If there's nothing out of place, then you continue round the corner, and the floor sign will say floor 1 or 1. If something is out of place, though, then you need to turn heel and go back around the corner that you came from, where you will find yourself then... This fucking dog. Then you'll find yourself ascending to the next floor. If you get this wrong, however, it will reset you to floor 0. If you can correctly navigate all the way to Exit 8, then you roll credits and you win. Some anomalies are easier to spot than others, with, lights flickering or a bunch of extra no smoking signs, or like the walking man towards you just replaced by 2 G-men standing in the middle of the corridor. But then there's more subtle things to look out for, like a door handle has been moved, or one of the lights is wonky, or the man is slightly bigger. There are some slightly creepy ones, like a scary face, a very, very faintly hidden on the ceiling, or like one of the doors being slightly ajar with a face in the darkness watching you, or a man very well camouflaged at the end of the corridor. And after a while, you start to figure out what the rules of the game are in terms of like where you're going to be seeing anomalies. Like it's not a pedantic game. You don't need to check every letter and number of every poster in the corridor to see if something's changed. But you'll still be keeping your eyes peeled very keenly to spot things and spotting things that aren't even there, or being convinced that everything is as it should be, and then resetting to floor 0 and questioning your sanity. I think the thing that makes this tense is that your attention is so hyper-focused, scouring the corridor for anomalies, that really focuses your senses, which is exactly the state you need to be in for a jump scare to work.
Yes.
But the jump scare doesn't really come. So you are basically in a constant state of tension, which I think you might struggle with. Like how you found Control so terrifyingly oppressive, even if nothing was actually happening. It's very quiet. It's very still, and it is quite tense. But I love this game. It's really fun. It's really clever. It's strangely addictive. I think in the same way that I like Where's Wally books. It's just like, it's spot the
Just looking
difference,
for
isn't it?
stuff.
It
Just
is.
looking for stuff.
Yeah, just looking for stuff. And once you've escaped once, then a new sign is added to the floor that tells you how many more anomalies you're yet to find. And I finished the game and it said you have 21 anomalies that you haven't identified. And I happily kept playing through the game until I'd found them all. And I've jumped back in for quite a few runs since, because I'll see if I can do like 2 or 3 escapes in a row. I'm a bit surprised there isn't like a high score mode where you just keep going for as long as you can.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely ripe for a sequel with hundreds of anomalies in, probably upping the fear factor too, to lean into what people apparently want. And also the film adaptation has just released in Japan. So
Really?
clearly, yep, there's a franchise that's being established and has a lot of appeal. But for the low cost of entry, I definitely recommend it. It's fun. It's clever.
There's a film though.
Yep.
God, video game.
Full feature film.
I listened to a podcast. I can't remember which podcast it was or who it was talking, but it was someone who was a screenwriter, like a sort of a film screenwriter, was one of the guests on this show. And they were saying we are at the crest of kind of games being the predominant thing that is being adapted for film in a way that it's like, at the moment, it still feels like, oh, we're looking for these big names. But he was basically saying there is so much that is going on in kind of back rooms at the moment already, and things that are being signed and scripts that are being penciled, that there's going to be a massive torrent in kind of the next sort of 5 years, where when all these deals come to fruition, then suddenly we have 15 new Netflix series based on games and 25 new kind of blockbuster films and everything else, because it's now the stuff that whole generations have grown up with from birth, essentially. It's visual language and kind of characters that we've had around us forever, and suddenly everyone is almost caught up at the same time to say, no, this is actually quite a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like what happened. It's like what's happened in the last 30 years with superheroes. It's exactly that,
Yeah.
It's
this is the next phase.
Yeah.
The game cinematic universe, whatever that means.
What else have you played?
Or this is a big one in a way. Like, again, going back to the start of summer, my holiday at this point feels about 100,000 years ago. But at the start of most summer holidays, because I suddenly feel like I've got all this time, I always sit down and I think, okay, is there a kind of project I can be doing across this next kind of 5-6 weeks? Something that just keep me busy, keep me sort of like doing something semi-creative or interesting in some way. So one summer I catalogued all of my vinyl records on Discogs. That took an awful long time, going through like every barcode, working out which pressings and stuff I had. I guess it was worthwhile. It means now at least I can go to a record shop and don't buy records I already have, which I would do occasionally before. One year I built my original emulation battle station on an external hard drive, and that was a big project, just running massive full ROM set downloads overnight for weeks on end on my then new laptop.
Yeah.
This year I thought I'd do a little research on emulation handhelds to learn more about the space, because I'm constantly on the search for shiny things. I like shiny toys. And I was interested to know what currently sat in between like a low power handheld like the Ambinic that we've been using, the RG35X XSP, and then the top end of like PC handhelds, because there's so much stuff being released now that I knew there'd be something in that middle tier.
Switch?
I mean, the Switch, essentially, in terms of like a mainstream thing that is not adaptable in the same way. But I wanted to know what you could tinker with that fit into that middle space. And the answer I found was that it all depends on what you're after personally in terms of form factor is the main thing. But the unifying common factor was that everything in this middle tier were like Android-based systems. So Android is an operating system. Can't talk. Android is an operating system I'm very familiar with, because I've had Android phones for the better part of 15 years or so now. So a few days down the YouTube review rabbit hole, and I decided my summer project was going to be buying and setting up a Retroid device, one called a Flip 2, and it seemed to balance power because it could emulate up to PlayStation 2 and GameCube, whilst also having really good battery life, lasting about 8 or so hours on a single charge. And it also had the form factor that I wanted, because it still was a clamshell like the SP.
Nice.
Had 2 analog sticks now, so it made it easier to play more modern games. And it was a wide sort of design as well. So, a horizontal machine, the Flip 2. The problem I hadn't foreseen is that ordering a device from China can take quite a while to ship. And my purchase, which was made in very early August, didn't arrive until the 29th of August, which was the second day of my new term at school.
Oh, no.
So it's here now, though. And I wanted to talk about what I've been doing with it, because I think it's very, very good. I thought, and I still do think, to be honest, that the Ambinic line of low power devices are pretty much perfect for anyone who's moderately tech savvy and wants to play old games up to about the PS1, because performance is great, build quality is really good, the cost is cheap. You know, you can pick up an
It's
SP that we've
again.
got. You can pick up an SP like we've got for 50 or 60 quid, sometimes less. And that's really obscene value for the range of games you can play. You've got an entire GBA library on there. You've got basically anything from the PlayStation 1. It's all going to run fine. There's a lot of other versions as well of the XX range. So you can have a vertical handheld, a horizontal handheld, a square one, a clamshell one. There's anything really. So for between 50 and 100 quid, you'll be set up if that's what you want. If you just want really old stuff, pick up and play. There you go. The Retroid line, though, including the Flip 2 clamshell, as well as the Pocket 5, which is the kind of Vita-style machine, I think they may just be the best things you can buy if you want a bit more juice and are willing to pay a slightly higher premium. So this still was sub £200, even with international shipping, which I think is extremely good value for a product of this quality. But that is obviously a bigger jump for a casual gamer who might just want to play Pokemon Red. So I'm not saying this is for everyone. Like if you just want to go, oh, I remember having a Game Boy, it'd be nice to play some of those games again. You can get something for £40 that will do the job. But if you do want a bit more choice, this I think is a really good option. Android is a very serviceable operating system, but it does take a bit more work setting up as well. Most handhelds like the Ambinic allow custom firmware to be installed, which really just streamlines the entire emulation setup outside of just dropping your ROM files into correctly labeled folders. It's very easy to do. But with Android, there's a lot more you need to tweak and configure, because you can set up a launcher that will route your games through to the right emulators and everything else. But even then, sometimes something won't work and you've got to be ready to say, right, what is the roadblock? Is it to do with folder access rights? Is it like the app doesn't have the right privileges and stuff like that? Because it's a phone operating system. So there are more limitations than kind of a little Linux-based thing like the Ambinics are. I love all that stuff. I genuinely love having a problem and trying to solve it. But again, I very much realize that's not for everyone. So it's kind of a caveat that you've got to chuck in there just to say, might not be for you if you don't want to put a bit of work in. But when things are in place, the Flip 2 is wonderful. Like it's really fast and snappy, runs the majority of games without any issues at all. And we're talking like N64, Saturn, Dreamcast, PSP, PS2, GameCube. Android has a very mature emulation scene. And as a result, all of these applications run great and work pretty much flawlessly. The other really good thing, Android sleep functionality is excellent. And it means that you close the lid, instant off, open it, instant on.
Amazing.
And modern networking as well means that if you're connecting to something like Retro Achievements, which I love playing on, you don't lose that connection. It's just like you open it up, it's ready to go. You're not going to suddenly find that you've been chucked out and it's not going to, carry over your progress and stuff like that, which is a stark contrast to the woollier Wi-Fi and connection times of other devices. The physical device itself, though, is the real star, because this has a 1080p OLED screen, and my oh my does it make me feel newly and freshly frustrated that Nintendo didn't bother, because the super black blacks and the actually white whites are beautiful. And if you're emulating, say, 4x3 content on, an older machine, you don't see the space. You don't see the space. It just, the black of the edge of your screen becomes the black of the screen.
Yeah.
And it's such a small thing, but it immediately makes even ancient games much more immersive. The resolution and pixel density as well, because it's quite a small screen. I don't know how many inches it is, but it's not
5.5.
massive. There we go, Googling in the background. 5.5 inches means that you can find really amazing overlays and shaders as well. You can set up GBA games and things like that feel incredibly display accurate to the original handheld, whilst also improving on every aspect, like the brightness, the contrast, the pixel latency, everything that was not great about those machines. You can retain the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
The buttons as well, I still remember when I was growing up, if you had a third-party controller, you were at an immediate disadvantage playing with a friend. Yeah. The buttons on this all feel great. The sticks feel great. And the sticks are also Hall effect sticks. So there's no drift. Again, unlike the Switch 2. not wanting to shit on that. But, this is a reasonably cheaply produced Chinese handheld. And it's doing a lot of these things much better than the big boy of Nintendo. Now, although I missed the summer window to really get stuck into the nitty-gritty of this little handheld, it arriving at the start of my new term has actually been almost perfect, because it's given a soft focus to keep me trucking through the first few weeks of school.
Nice.
I get serious back to school blues. Like, some people are kind of like, well, it's just big teaching, isn't it? But for me, I'm not exaggerating. I feel like I'm in mourning for the holiday the first couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing when I'm at school for those first few sessions is just thinking, when I get home, I'm going to do this fun thing. And that is what is powering me through at the moment. And then eventually, you get the balance right and you kind of have a sort of equilibrium for school going forwards. But there's definitely a time where it's been great to know I could come home, I could scrape my libraries for artwork, I could fiddle with a new emulator or whatever and just have a job to do.
Yeah.
And now that is set up, there are so many games I've been playing and having a brilliant time. Would you like to know about some of them? Little mini reviews. Not at all.
First, I'd like to know what the difference is between the SD865 model and the D11.
So the SD one, which is the more expensive one, slightly, it's about $30 more, I think, is a Snapdragon chip, which is much more powerful than the other one.
Okay.
So
Which did you get?
That's the one I went for.
Okay.
So it's more compatible. Again, with the way Android works, it's like stuff works on all of these chips, but you definitely have chips that are more common and thus more favored for developers. So it kind of like stuff just works better. And I've had very few issues with that. So yeah. So games that I have played, because I've been back at school, brain is obviously in the mud. So obviously
Tetris.
From Tetris. I very recently beat, we're talking like a day ago, maybe 2 days ago, a PSP knockoff called Tetraminos. It was very hard because of one specific challenge, which was clearing 300 lines in a very annoying mode that spawns a single random garbage block somewhere up the very top of the well every few levels. And then it's very easy to just snag something on it at speed.
Yeah.
I could reach 290 lines with very little effort on basically every run. And then I'd always fail on the final stretch because the speed almost doubles in that last 10. I got there though. When I finally did it, I like shouted out loud and swore at the screen in happiness. But it was definitely a time when Georgia was like, "You're right," when I'm telling Tetris to go fuck itself. I've also been encouraged by both fresh retro achievement sets that popped up, as well as the higher power of this new device, to play some PS2 games.
Nice.
And I've made some decent progress, more than ever, in fact, embarrassingly, through Half-Life on the console. I'm about halfway through the game now.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's the way to play it.
Yeah, obviously. As well as picking through bits of a few perennial favourites like Burnout 2, Outrun 2, stuff like that. As well as some relatively unknown or untested titles for me. Like I played a bit of Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, which is like the action RPG take on a full-fat Baldur's Gate. And the first-person shooter Black that was made by the Burnout devs just casually one year. It was just like, we're going to do a very realistic war shooter. But yeah, interesting stuff. All runs great. Back on the PSP, after I wrapped my time with Tetraminos, I've also played a few hours of a tactics RPG I've heard discussed on another show called Jean, a level 5 developed title loosely based on Joan of Arc. It's very good. But I'm already hitting the wall I always do in these games that I've tried to play, like Final Fantasy Tactics, like Disgaea, Namco, Capcom, all of those, where battles get longer, maps get bigger, and my tactical nous no longer cuts the mustard. So that's on pause at the moment. I got a few hours in and then thought, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why should I have that character and not that character? I don't know. I just don't know. On GBA, I went back to GT Advance, a racer from the machine's launch window that I talked about way back when on friend of the show, Jeremy's Podcast Advance project.
Yeah.
We talked about that together. It uses realistic Donkey Kong style car renders on Mode 7 tracks, which is a curious aesthetic, but I love the drift model of this one. It's really good to play. It feels really nice in the hand. Always enjoy spending a bit of time with that. I've also returned to my largely beaten save of WarioWare that's lain dormant for years at this point, because again, on Retro Achievement, someone had revised the set to add more high score challenges. And I thought, I wonder if I still have my save, because otherwise none of this is unlocked anymore.
Yeah.
And I did. The save that I started on my Vita, then moved to my laptop, then moved to my Steam Deck, then moved to my Ampanic, and now I've moved to the Flip 2. It's all there. My save is just ready to go. So that's been really cool. And I'm gradually picking through some of the harder challenges there, where it's like the boss rush mode at the end, get a certain score there, or each kind of like remix of games get to a certain, score level there. On the N64, I've played the first chunk of Mario 64 for the 700th time just to see what the analog stick felt like.
Still ugly.
It looks all right when you sort of tweak it. There's things you can do, but
by tweak it, you mean close your eyes?
Just squint. I also had a big old blast of weirdo adventure racing game Beetle Adventure Racing that I owned as a kid, and I like that. And then I tweaked the device's emulator just enough to run Heavy Hitter Conquers Bad Fur Day perfectly, because that's not an easy one to emulate, and I wanted to kind of like test out where we could go.
Because of all the piss.
Because of all the piss. But it was mainly to remind myself that no subsequent playthrough will ever capture how I felt playing the game on a real N64 when I was 13.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because it's just not that good. Like,
No.
I hate to say it, I don't think it's a very good game. It is still a tech showcase for the N64. Like, it's a beautiful game for the time, but it's just not that fun. And when you're not 13, it's not that funny either.
No.
Lastly, a couple more. Discord followers might have seen I went through a spell of playing Mahjong games in the summer. That was before this handheld came. But after beating 2 Mahjong games on the Game Boy and then Super Nintendo, I'm using the increased grunt of the Flip 2 to work through Shanghai Triple Threat on the Sega Saturn. It's just Mahjong, so I can't really say anything about it. But it does make me excited to explore Saturn emulation more thoroughly, because again, that's something that was absolutely not possible on a lower power device, even if it was on the Steam Deck. And maybe having kind of the ability to play these games in just the right sort of size form factor could be the year for a late Panzer Dragoon Saga replay.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's been on the path for a while.
Need to report back on Saturn emulation, because if that is good on this thing, then I'm getting one sent to you to set up.
Post haste. What all of this has proven is twofold for me. Firstly, that there is actually a viable space between the low and high power devices for this sort of like third pillar, because the Ambient felt great when playing Game Boy games, but it was too diminutive when you got as far as the PS1 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just too small. The Steam Deck is great for higher end stuff like your Steam library, obviously, but also it can do PS2, even some, but it still felt like overkill if you were trying to play 8 or 16-bit titles because of its size and its grunt and the screen's massive and whatever else. The Retroid and all of these kind of Android devices in this power and price space have just about the perfect form factor, so as not to dwarf the low resolution stuff like the Game Boy, whilst also carrying enough oomph to make higher end emulation a relative breeze as well, with controls that properly complement those consoles. You know, you have triggers, you have analog sticks, you have all these sort of things. So PS2 is actually viable, as opposed to thinking like, there's actually no analog sticks. We'll map that to the D-pad and just kind of hope we don't need anything like that, because it's not ideal. It's not ideal. Secondly, and this is more personal to me, retro gaming, I think, has become almost as important as access to Tetris for me in my own mental health toolkit. Like, there's something very grounding and comforting in just having access to these little libraries of old stuff. And it may just be a little Chinese handheld with an even littler micro SD card stuffed inside it. But all of these objects, for me, carry a sort of ineffable power to reconnect me with a space that's kind of defined me ever since I was really, really wee. And yes, I'm back at school, and yes, I'm now divvying up my time again into little chunks to ensure I give enough of my day to planning and marking and admin and everything else that comes with kind of modern teaching. But one of these devices, whether very cheap and cheerful, mid-range, or full-on handheld PC, they are all portals to the stuff I find very important in a very different way to a contemporary console like the PS5 or the Switch 2. Like, it is a different space for me. And I've gone back to playing like 20 minutes or something before I get ready for work, or playing a few rounds of Tetris whilst we're watching rubbish on the TV in the evening. And the instant resume of this particular device has reduced still further the already pretty limited friction of the other consoles in my collection. So the big takeaway is just play old games. You know, there's something for everyone. There's literally something for everyone. And there's so many players in this space now. There is a handheld for everyone as well. If you want to do a bit of research, you'll find something that really speaks to you, I think. Anyone out there, like, play old games, you won't regret it.
There we go. How many Game of the Years have we had this year now?
Oh, God.
Blueprints, Donkey Kong Bonanza we thought about for a bit.
Yeah.
Night Rain for me, Clair Obscur for you.
I'm not looking forward to doing our show at the end of the year.
I mean, not to mention the more typical AAA Game of the Year contenders, things like Death Stranding 2, Indiana Jones, Ghost of Yotei still to come. I've also still got Metro Prime 4.
Yes.
At the point of recording, Hades 2, and other games to come. But I find it hard to believe now that something is going to come along and eclipse Hollow Knight Silksong.
Is it that good?
I've never been in a rush for this game. Like, I'm honestly never in a rush for any game. I wish every game took the time it needed to make it to the standard of quality that Silksong is. You can feel every day of its 7-year development in the same way you could with Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
And Tears of the Kingdom is a good comparison point, actually, for a sequel needing to follow the shadow of a masterpiece and find a way of eclipsing it. And Silksong does take everything that made Hollow Knight amazing and improve it to such a high degree that it makes it look easy.
Yeah.
And that's where you can feel the experience of the devs getting the balance of this game right in isolation in terms of its own game, but also then as a successor to one of the most celebrated Metroidvanias of all time. And pun absolutely intended, they nail it. The exploration in Silksong is as good as exploration has ever been in a 2D game. Every area is terrifying and intriguing. You don't want to poke around and you can't stop yourself. It's that combination that makes like Dark Souls so successful. You're rewarded so much for poking around as well and discovering all the secrets that are in the game. Sorry, I'm sure it's chewing gum out. The map is astonishingly open as well. You can go in any direction at any point. I honestly don't know how you design a game like this. It's so organic. It's so open. It's so versatile. For the first probably 20 or 30 hours of playing this game, I was comparing progress with friend of the show, Casper, at various moments. And we were always pretty careful trying not to give spoilers to one another. But for so much of the game, we'd attempt to touch base about an area or an ability or a boss and discover that the other had just no clue what they were talking about, despite having put 20 hours into the game themselves. Like, I haven't watched any speedruns of the game yet, but I imagine that you can probably complete the game without needing to go to, I don't know,
That's it.
probably 3/4 of the world. Even after I'd 100%ed the game, I'm still finding secrets and things to discover. It's truly extraordinary. The other thing that this game steps up from the first is the difficulty level, which was already very high in Hollow Knight, and I liked the way that actually the devs explained this in Silksong. Is that the Hornet, who is your protagonist in Silksong, she is immediately much more skilled than Hollow Knight. She's a much higher ceiling for her abilities given her nature. You are much faster for a start. You're given so many tools and mechanics to put at your disposal, so many different build potentials as well that you can customize your play style, like not just to your personal tastes, but also change it for the different circumstances you're facing in the game. Like the key to overcoming some bosses lay in the minutiae of what tools and abilities I customize my build with, but also the tried and tested loop of trying and testing the bosses and failing and learning and trying again is still as satisfying as it has ever been. And there were certainly some bosses in the game that I honestly thought at times I would never beat.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to beat this until you just glimpse just a little chink in their armor or a little window in their attack patterns that you could exploit. And that feeling you get when you finally beat them, like fist pumping in the silence of your own lounge, is unparalleled. Another area of the game that is just unfathomably well balanced is the combat. Like, given the amount of different ways in this game that you can fight, the abilities you can use, the specific mechanics of each combat crest that you can have, then coupling in the fact that you can take on so many of these bosses at so many different points in your game as well, to then cater for that, it's mad. Everything just feels so good, so insanely satisfying when you pull off some silky, slick fighting, mixing abilities and dodges and jumping and gliding and parrying. It's unreal. It blows my mind. It's, like I said, it makes it look effortless because of how much work has gone into it. I enjoyed Nora, my daughter. She watched me quite a bit playing it. She had some suggestions when I was struggling with some of the boss fights. I thought I'd offer a selection of what she floated in case anybody else is listening and needs some help. Try using your needle. Hornet fights with a needle.
Yeah.
I know. I can find you a hole to hide in. Can you ask it to sit?
Can
Which
you?
I liked.
Can you? No.
I know. When the boss is gone, just run away really quickly.
Again, great strategy.
Absolutely. And then she said, why are you not good at this game? And I said, because it is a famously hard game. And she said, play another game then. I think it does say something about the level. I think it says something about the level of difficulty in this game, but also it says so much about my character that I would frequently take breaks away from Silksong when it was getting too hard and play Night Rain to chill out.
just have a relaxing time.
It's ridiculous, but it's true. Another area of the game that I think has stepped up hugely from the first game is the level of the platforming in the game. It was already very, very good and tricky in Hollow Knight, but it's something that was blown out of the water by Eterna Noctis when I played that. And I would put a lot of very good and bad money on the fact that the devs must have played Eterna Noctis at some point during the development of Silksong, taking some inspiration from it, because there's clear reminiscences of that game here. It's very, very hard at times, very frustrating at times, but it was always my fault, and it was always within my power to get through it. So obviously, when you do, you feel brilliant. Something that won't get probably a lot of attention in like the coverage of this game is just how good the writing is. The world of these games are just fantastic. There is so much deep lore, all contained within this ridiculous, grim, cutesy bug exterior. Like, it's so epic. It doesn't care that it looks cute. It doesn't care that it's bugs. This is a full dark fantasy world, and I just love how much they own that. But also, like, the tone of the writing is always incredible. Like, the intricacies of the dialogue between some of these different characters, including Hornet, who's a vocal protagonist. There's so many amazing characters with brilliant characteristics, frequently hilarious, frequently undercutting expectations, all brought to life with some of the best and most detailed animations I've ever seen in a game. Every single instance has been considered when animating Hornet. Like, the tiny little inflections of character work in the supporting characters speaks volumes and tells a story all of its own. It is unbelievable. Like, at every single point in the development of this game, they must have stopped and just said, have we got something for that? It's like, they're not doing anything. What can they do? You know? All of this like level of detail spreads to the world design, the different biomes, the areas. Everything has its own rule set, its own palette within, the general world aesthetic. It all fits together beautifully and organically, with so much nuance in every single element that's been like designed with clear and proper purpose. This also spreads to the sound work in the game, which is mind-blowing. The music is stunning for a start, some beautiful, haunting themes. The fact that music itself plays a part in the story, and the character of the Hornet too is amazing. There's you get to string silk down your needle to turn it into an instrument that you can then play, and that is just astounding. The sound design is exceptional. The sort of buggies language that they talk is just adorable and brilliant. It says so much whilst also being gobbledygook. Like, the way that the acoustics of all the sound effects change depending on what the space is like, echoing around the vast halls of the Citadel or dampened out in the narrow tunnels underground. Everything has a sound effect. It all just works together so organically, along with all these other elements that just make this world feel so real and tangible and crawling with life. Another thing that probably won't get as much coverage as it deserves is the haptic feedback in the game. Like the HD Rumble 2 of the Switch 2, I mean, it's got the ability to convey some really beautiful details and subtle ones at that, meaning that every little footstep of Hornet is felt, and that changes just slightly depending on the surface that you're running on. Feeling the pitter-patter of the rain, the clanging of ancient bells, the vast rumblings of the bosses. Just it is an absolute treat. I fully understand that the difficulty level in Silksong will put some people off, but it's not a game that is hard for the sake of being hard. It's not obnoxiously difficult, It knows what it is, but it has a reason for how it's doing literally everything. Again, you can feel every single day of its long development time. Like, it is as close to a perfect game as you can imagine for what its clarity of vision is and how completely it then delivers on it.
Yeah.
And the game is huge. It took me 56 hours to finish it.
Wow.
And that was at 96% completion. It took me another few hours to bring that up to 100%. And bizarrely, there's still stuff I need to do, so I'm not sure how they're working that percentage out.
101% Donkey Kong style.
The game is split into sort of 3 acts. The story is split into 3 acts, and it actually rolls credits for the first time after Act 2, before it then goes into its enormous epic, and I won't spoil it, 3rd act. There'll be some other adjectives that can go in there, and nouns. I mean, like, bringing it back to what I was saying about Pokemon Legends Z2A, a lesser, greedier developer could very, very easily have sold Act 3 as DLC. But Team Cherry took their time to make sure that they could deliver a complete game and not let the voraciously salivating fan base feel shortchanged, which is also, frankly, impossible because it's insanely generous with how the game has been priced, because it's like £20.
Yeah, it's cheap, isn't it?
Again, something some people have quibbled with because it's undercutting other indie developers who can't afford to sell their games as cheaply as that. And other developers also kicked off about the game sort of shadow dropping with their release date trailer preceding the actual release by only like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And obviously that then takes the attention away from any other game that's coming out on the same day or same week or whatever. But it does make me laugh that you can't actually lay that criticism directly at the feet of Team Cherry, because they barely marketed this game for 7 years.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what's made the game so insanely hyped, because they never talk about it. Every single Nintendo Direct would swiftly be followed with chatter about Silksong because it wasn't featured. And that must be hugely frustrating for developers who have poured years of love into a game that was showcased in the Direct to be eclipsed by a game that was not there.
Silksong when?
You know? It's entirely not Team Cherry's fault that they made an incredible game and then they made an incredible sequel, and that they've had to do nothing to make people buy it other than make it. You know, they must be feeling so smug, and I love it. Like, they deserve to feel smug because they've made a masterpiece. Like, Silksong, as with the first Hollow Knight, is filled with some devilishly devious subversions and traps that catch you out and make you go, I know what you're doing, Team Cherry, and fuck you. And it's very on brand then that Team Cherry would release the game like this.
Yeah.
If you tried Hollow Knight and didn't get on with it, Silksong is not for you.
Yeah.
If you haven't played Hollow Knight and you like Metroidvanias, Souls-likes, platform games, adventure games, tight combat games, and you're up for the challenge, play Hollow Knight first, because you'll need it to warm you up for Silksong, and then you will be in for one of the greatest 1-2s in gaming history.
Wow. Big. Game of the year, yeah?
I haven't actually played it. An hour and 10. Fuck. Next month will be shorter.
No way.
Around the world, we're back, Chris. We're back on our dirigible. That's it. And at the request of friend of the show and former guest Gregory Kogos, we are in the Ukraine.
Yes.
We're in the Ukraine celebrating the games of that country. Do you want to know some facts about Ukraine?
Highlight of the month. Lay it on me.
It's the largest country in Europe. It is known as the breadbasket of Europe, famously because of the fertility of its soil being the prime condition to grow wheat.
I didn't know that. That's pretty. That's nice,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Weirdly, I knew that before this. I didn't. Obviously. Ukraine is also the world's largest producer of sunflower seeds, and they grow enough sunflowers to cover the entire of Slovenia, apparently.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how big Slovenia is.
Smaller.
Yeah. The world's deepest metro station is in Kyiv, over 100 meters below the surface, built during the Cold War era with the threat of nuclear war influencing their depths. On a brighter note, Easter eggs originated from Ukraine, which is pretty cool. So there you go. Started with dipping eggs in wax or something.
And then chocolate. Now, that would be another country would have bastardized it, wouldn't it?
Definitely.
I would imagine.
Definitely.
I would imagine.
And also, chicken Kiev, it can only be known as that if it is a battered chicken parcel filled with garlic butter from the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. Otherwise, it should technically be known as a sparkling, spicy squirter.
They come out, like, in Alan Partridge's parlance, hotter than the sun.
And directly into your eyes.
They really do. And you can't guarantee the sputter point of where it's going to be. Like you
No.
go to cut and you're like, well, obviously it will fire away from where my knife stroke is going. That's where it will burst. And it's like out
Absolutely.
the back. It's like a jam donut. It chooses a new point of weakness.
It's Buckaroo all over again.
Oh dear.
What of the games of Ukraine, Chris? What of the games?
There's a decent range of games from Ukraine. I'll mention a few of the country's relatively large or larger developers towards the end of this section. But in terms of interesting one-offs or side notes first, there's a game called Football Tactics and Glory. It's an interesting football sim meets tactics RPG that I really wanted to love, but just really didn't when I tried to play it a few years back. This comes from Ukrainian team Creo Team, not to be confused with Croatian Crow Team, different people, and has you moving players almost Sabutio style across a gridded pitch to sort of preempt opponents' runs or set up for audacious shots and crosses. It's not as good as I wanted it to be. But it's interesting. It is interesting. The Party Hard series of games that I know about mainly because they're always on perpetual deep discounts on the Switch eShop. They're kind of like heavily inspired by the stylish violence of Hotline Miami, things like that. They come from Ukrainian dev Pinochle Games, and they seem to be reasonably well received. I haven't got first-hand experience on those, though. Perpetual meme game Big Rigs Over the Road Racing comes from Ukraine-based Stella Stone, and at one stage held the unenviable title of lowest ranked game on Metacritic with a whopping 6% aggregate score, which I thought was an interesting thing to mention.
Yeah.
Getting bigger, the Stalker series comes to us from GSC Game World, another Kyiv-based studio, and indeed it was the splintering of that studio that birthed 4A Games, who would go on to create the stylistically similar Metro series of games. So that's 2033, Last Light, and Exodus. Now, to my understanding, the Stalker games take place in the direct geographic and historical aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster. And although Metro is actually set in the abandoned metro tunnels in Moscow, there's definitely genre overlap between these series in terms of like what they are doing and what they're trying to do and the way narrative works and the way the experience is and everything else. Ubisoft, although not having a Ukraine-specific office, do have European teams stationed all over the continent, including Kyiv, and this team has supported on components for a number of high-profile games, including some of the Tom Clancy games, Prince Persia: The Lost Crown, and even the most recent Trials game, Trials Rising, was in parts developed by people of the Ukraine. And finally, Frogwares, most famous for the very long-running Sherlock Holmes adventure series, hails from Ukraine. I believe, would I be right in thinking you might have picked through one of their other IPs for your game of the month, Jonathan, that was not Sherlock Holmes?
I have indeed.
Yes?
I have been playing The Sinking City.
Lovecraft.
Very Lovecraft. Very Lovecraft. The Sinking City was first released back in 2019, but it's had a nice shiny remaster for modern platforms back in May of this year. And I've been playing that remastered version on PS4.
What?
So The Sinking City is an open-world detective action-y adventure game inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft. Now, I'm a big Lovecraft fan. His work, not his politics. Definitely worth saying that.
Yeah.
And this game has been on my radar for a while, so it was nice to have the excuse to play it. All the familiar Lovecraft tropes at play here. Nightmarish visions of apocalyptic aquatic monstrosities, interdimensional multiversal threats, swiftly dwindling sanity, occultism, proper right-down weirdos at every turn. It's set in the 1920s, so it fits the period of his writings as well. And it's a strange thing to say about such a miserable, disturbing and unsettling world, but it's just so great to spend time in it. The level of detail in the game is quite something. Like, you can properly luxuriate in the atmosphere and take your time slowly poking around and exploring the world, you know, and these people and the story. The level of detail and design in the game is just huge. It's fully realized, populated, considered world, which is so key for an open world game, but especially for one that encourages you to go off the beaten track and really pick over the little things and see what's around every corner and look in the places you don't think you meant to look in. It means that, you know, the devs can't phone in any bits of the game. It's all got to be thought out. It's all got to be realized. Tone and atmosphere of the game is just great and palpable. It's all augmented by visual representations of your waning sanity, which is something I absolutely love. It's significantly less gimmicky than Eternal Darkness, which
volume control.
still absolutely adore. And it was the first game to properly sort of do that. But here it's more subtle, but it's frequently unsettling. It's never properly scary. Like, I like my sort of horror games to be sort of creepy and unsettling, but not. I don't want to feel fear. I don't want that. I don't
No.
want to feel afraid.
No. Who does?
That's not what I want.
Definitely
That's not what
not
I
me.
want. That's what I had when I played Resident Evil 7 in VR.
Mm.
I felt scared, and that wasn't nice. Excuse me. It plays a bit like Resident Evil, not first person. It's third person, over the sort of over the shoulder, over the counter cameras, over the shoulder counters, over the camera. Fuck me, over the shoulder camera. The general sort of scavenging and crafting mechanics, finding anything and everything that might be of use or interest, and adding it to your notes and your inventory. There is combat and action stuff, but the real star of the game is this detective narrative. For a start, the writing is great. Lovecraft's writing, tone, and dialogue is quite easy to ape and imitate, and often feels like parody. But here they've really nailed it, and it works. It works well. The voice actors are great. It's just a lot of fun. It owns how ridiculous it is. It's great. I'm not going to give anything away about the story, and I've not finished the game yet either. But it takes so many great twists and turns and stomach churning surprises and all kinds of things that you would and wouldn't expect in a Lovecraftian tale, or would expect and not expect, or wouldn't expect to expect. Who knows? The characters are all really well designed. I love the visual design of the characters in this. It's just brilliant, especially the Innsmouthers, who are exactly as I pictured them when I read The Shadow over Innsmouth. Picture someone that's fishy, just
very fishy.
But the way the game handles like the detective mechanics is just really cool. It's different to what I've experienced in these sort of games before, which, to be fair, I haven't played a huge amount of these type of narrative heavy games, or like the Telltale games or anything like that. That sort of that sort of thing. But it really feels like you're properly putting all the pieces of the puzzle together yourself, not just going from A to B or adding things to your inventory. The game just making it work. You've got to collect the evidence and then work out how it all connects to each other. And you can only do that by reading the details and talking to people, listening to them, not just skipping through everything and hoping the game will do the rest. So it's really satisfying. And I really love that it's a slow game. And I'm a bit annoyed that I didn't play this when I was, say when Eternal Darkness came out. This is exactly the sort of game I would, like I said, luxuriate in it. But for me, like these days, like I crave quicker experiences. I want things I can actively play. But then also, maybe in the evenings, if I have been playing games, I've been playing Night Rain, and now that that's slowing down, maybe once everybody's gone to bed, I'll open up some creepy Lovecraft stuff and
Sinking City.
The Sinking City. There's not really much more I can say about the game without risking spoiling the story. But what I will say is that I think this is a really impressive game. Like, it looks and feels wonderful to be in this world. And if you're a fan of Lovecraftian things, then it's definitely well worth your time. I mean, certainly in lieu of good adaptations of Lovecraft stuff in other media, which are a bit few and far between. This at least feels like, whilst it's not a direct adaptation, it's an absolute slam dunk. I love it.
Nice.
What did you play?
I went off-piste a bit for this one. Like, as I mentioned very briefly, I tried Football Tactics and Glory, and I really wanted to be able to say, oh, this is a hidden gem. It totally reinvents football on a console. But in the couple hours I gave it, it just didn't click for me at all. It's both too complex and too simple at the same time, at least in the early matches. And so I went back to my big Dorling Kinsley list of games developed in the Ukraine to choose something a little different. Action Forms Limited were a Ukrainian developer whose doors were open between 1995 and 2011. They scored a modest hit with their breakout shooter Chasm the Rift in 1997, which coincidentally was brought by some other team semi-recently and released across all modern machines. So you can get it on the Switch if you want. But their bread and butter became a long-running series of hunting games called Carnivores. And this was a PC-first set of slow and methodical dinosaur hunting games. When iOS had its big games boom, they partnered with another Ukrainian studio known as Tatum Games to bring a couple of the better received Carnivores entries to mobile. And when the PSP was still doing reasonable numbers, the same two games were ported from iOS to the PSP by another Ukrainian team called Beat Shapers. So we're kind of like 3 tiers of Ukrainian development down now. Of the 2 games available for Sony's handheld, I decided I was going to play, or try to play, Carnivores Dinosaur Hunter, which was the first of the 2 releases to come out on that handheld. And I think it's actually pretty decent for what it is. This is a slow, reasonably awkward game to play on the limited controller set of the PSP, but with a few rounds of practice, things do start to click, and it becomes almost like an incremental game because you're forced to play early, simple hunts to earn points that can be spent on the weapons needed to take on harder hunts with bigger creatures that grant more points to put back into the pool to push you forwards to bigger creatures. And it's that kind of like bigger and bigger and bigger sort of thing. Each stage is open-ended. It's set across a reasonably expansive map that will take a good few minutes to traverse end to end. Depending on the mission you choose, there'll be different dinosaurs roaming the space. On earlier missions, they tend to be herbivorous, and so only interact with you if you get too close to them and spook them, or indeed if they've been shot at, that will make a move as well. But eventually you need to take far more care in your approach, ensuring that you've got a decent loadout, so you're not going to run out of ammunition in the middle of a firefight and everything else. You always have at least one goal dinosaur that you're hunting. And although you can take down other creatures in the same hunt, you're only credited points for those you have an active bounty for. So you might need to take some out sometimes because they are a threat to your life as the hunter. But otherwise, you can kind of let the kind of like the nice ones just do their own thing. Let the Stegosaurus just have his moment in the distance. It doesn't matter. The controls, as I said, do take a bit of practice, but they work well once you've built up a bit of muscle memory. You move forwards, backwards, and side to side using the face buttons, N64 Turok style, with aiming handled with the left, and on the PSP, only analog stick. That's why it was set up this way. You draw your weapon with L, you fire with R, and you use the D-pad to trigger all manner of hunting assists. So One Direction will load an overview map that will pinpoint where on the island your bounty dinos are, but you do then lose score for consulting this map. So instead, you want to try and maximize your profits by using a combination of the binoculars, the compass, and your dinosaur call that are all set to the other directional buttons. Given the power of the PSP, this is not as in-depth as modern hunting games, where I assume, because I've not played any of them, you're forced to probably track animals by prints or scent or some nonsense like that. But the slightly more pick up and play, slightly more arcadey take on the sim genre that this goes for actually made it far more enjoyable for a total genre newbie like me. You know, if you drop me into kind of like hunting sim 2025, I'm probably going to get nowhere. Whereas this, where it was like, this is the shoot button, this is the map button, go that direction, and there'll probably be a dinosaur. I can handle that. That's about my speed. What I particularly liked about the experience, and feel free to set off some QI klaxons for this one in post, is the sense of place you get from slowly learning a relatively desolate map and eventually being able to pinpoint your location by the trees and the stumps and the swamps and the bodies of water and everything else. This would absolutely be better on a bigger scale, but there is something reasonably effective in playing this on a small screen, like the PSP, or I've been playing it on the Flip 2 that I mentioned earlier, because I think it does it a bit more justice than blowing up this tiny experience to a huge 60-inch TV. You know, it was not meant for that because it was on a tiny little handheld in the first place. So it kind of fits in that context too. There's no music, there's just ambient sounds and animal calls. The only human interactions you have are when you've downed a trophy dinosaur and you hear a voice clip that is in English with a very heavy Ukrainian twang report that they've received coordinates and are incoming to collect your bounty.
You give me an impression of that.
No, if you hover around for long enough, you will see a little kind of like spacecraft type thing hover over and pick up your dinosaur, as if it's like one of those big sort of magnets you have at like a car lot, you know, to pick up the junk cars and drop it down somewhere else. And then if you watch it, it will zoom off into the PSP's horizon fog. It's all very nice. Again, I think it's decent. You know, it's an oddity really, but it is decent. Both of the Carnivores games on the PSP launched as minis. That was kind of the platform's smaller games that could be bought digital only. And from research, they were £2.50 each. And for that sort of price, I think any quibbles you might have about lack of simulation depth or breadth, they kind of wash away, you know?
Yeah.
You can't expect that much for a few quid, especially not at that time. I don't remember buying any games digitally on my PSP. I did on the Vita, absolutely. But this wasn't one that I picked up on that machine when the Vita was kind of my daily driver. But via emulation today, I think it's worth a little look. Although with the heavy caveat that if you are into more modern hunting sims, don't bother unless you want to shoot some dinosaurs specifically. But if like me, you're just intrigued what this looked like and how it played on a console that only had one analog stick, it's an interesting curio, and I think some good stuff from Ukraine.
PlayStation Official Magazine gave it 2 out of 10.
What is their review?
Games Master gave it 30%.
All good. They're the ones to watch out for.
10.
They're the ones to watch out for.
Push Square gave it 5 out of 10. So
there
that's the most positive.
I think I feel about like that. 5's about fair.
I want to see what Official Magazine.
I'm trying to find a scan.
No, they don't have a digital thing of it. Yeah, there we go. So that's the Ukraine in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
certainly
everything.
in terms of games.
Carnivores and the Sinking City.
Yeah, the Sinking Carnivores.
What more could you want?
That's a good name for a band. We are Sinking Carnivores.
There we go.
That's better. Do you want to know where we're going next?
Go on. Where are we going?
Well, we're at the halfway point.
Yeah.
And we've sort of been avoiding going to any of the big countries.
Yeah.
Not in terms of land size, but in terms of development. And we've got to do them at some point. So we're going to do America.
Oh, boy.
The United States of America, as they are sometimes known.
I will say up front, I will not be researching the games of America in quite the same depth that I've tried to do for these smaller
just
development countries.
Gives the highlights. All this and more to come. If you're enjoying what we're doing, come and join us on the Discord. Go to .games and find the Discord link there. If you're really enjoying what we're doing, share the podcast on your social media, like our posts, subscribe to our channels, and that would be a huge help. If you really, really want to support us, go to o3c.games/support. Give us some money. Goodbye.
Yeah.